Hi, y'all. I'm Joe, your host and cannabis lifestyle guide. And I'm excited to introduce to you today the founder of Forti Goods. This is Sharon Kevil joining me on the podcast stage. Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm really excited about our conversation to get today. I have a poster framed on my wall that says slow cannabis. And when people come in, they're always like, oh, what does that mean? And, I have to explain to them, how we have to just hold on to the craftsmanship of
Mhm.
growing cannabis and consuming cannabis and just like the whole beautiful ritual of this plant. And with your background in design and retail and furniture, when you and I started having a conversation, it just popped into my head. I'm like, I'm wanting slow cannabis in a fast
Mhm.
world. Like this is a real problem. And you crossed over into the cannabis space not too terribly long ago. So
Mhm.
I'm excited to talk about the parallels between both of these industries that you've worked in. So tell us a little bit about your background, Sharon.
Sure. I went to school for interior design, and I have been an interior designer. I still sometimes practice a little bit here and there. But I have been an interior designer for almost 20 years. And this is actually, Forti Goods is actually my second business. So shortly after college, I started a consultancy for interior design for small businesses that were looking for interior services. And I did that for a number of years. And then right around the time the economy crashed in 2007, 2008, I went to work at a large retailer, Kohl's, and I started in store design there. And then after a couple of years doing that, I moved into product design. They were looking for a product designer in the furniture or in the home department, specifically doing indoor and outdoor furniture and some decor. And I thought it sounded like an incredible opportunity. And thankfully, they hired me. So I got to make a career change without going back to school. And I learned a lot about how furniture is made, the global manufacturing of furniture and fast furniture. And, it was an incredible experience. I'm so thankful for my time there. But, as I kind of got to the tail end of my time there, I started seeing some things that I was like, this doesn't really make me feel so great. I was pregnant and, after having my daughter, I wanted to leave the world a better place so that, when she's older and has children, like the air is still breathable and, things like that. So,
Yeah.
um,
So
you know,
let's talk a little bit about the things that you were noticing, because I have my own personal examples as a consumer
mhm.
that I think will be amusing to share. But talk about what you were seeing from the inside out.
Sure. So, when I was pregnant, we landed in Shanghai one day and, they had an air quality alert. We have air quality alerts here too, but, there they just have more, unregulated, pollution and, not as much, they don't, have the same EPA considerations that we do here, which, we still have smog. If you're in California, in some of the more dense cities, you still see smog and you still have, issues with, outdoor air quality. But there it was really bad. They were saying, don't, if you are, elderly or pregnant or a small child, like don't take your exercise outside today. And I remember by the end of the day, I felt kind of like I had the flu and I wasn't sick. It was just from breathing the air all day long. And a few years, I think it was a few years before that, or maybe it was after that. I don't actually remember anymore. But there was a summit of world leaders that was meeting in Hangzhou, China, and the government actually shut down all factory production months in advance. And for us, it was during a time of the year when we traveled to visit the factories, and it was during production time. So, a lot of the factories and a lot of the retailers were really kind of freaking out about this. because they're like, oh, we don't know how we're going to, deliver our products. And the government was like, absolutely not. There were huge fines for people who were caught kind of going around,
And
going
that's
around
because
and
they
doing
were
it.
trying to just clean things up for a
Clean things up
short
for
little
Summit.
portion of
They
time.
wanted blue
Mhm.
skies, and Hangzhou is a beautiful city. I mean, beautiful city. And they wanted, I always thought when we were there that it was just, overcast all the time, just because that was like the weather, like kind of like a San Francisco type thing where,
Mhm.
you've got a lot of fog and things like that. And really it was smog from all of the surrounding, the factories and the areas surrounding it. And it's a little bit of an unfair comparison between here and there because they do have so much more, they do the bulk of the world's manufacturing.
Well, and again, that's part of the problem is that we keep allowing stuff to be pushed there because it can be done cheaper, and it's done
Yes.
cheaper because it's not regulated. And
Hmm.
so when you have somebody who is creating in the US, they are handcrafting their furniture or their cannabis or their products. It costs more money. And
Yeah.
so then all of a sudden your fate is in the hands of a consumer that is most of the time not educated.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. And, I will say that there are a lot of, there are a number. If I wanted to go to, anywhere in Asia, be it Vietnam, be it China, any place that's producing furniture, um, and find a factory that is doing things sustainably and paying their workers well, I could do that. I don't think I would have a problem finding a factory like that. There are factories at all, like here, there are factories at all ends of the spectrum in terms of how they care about the planet, how they care about their people, all of those things. But, then I also, my product is made for the US market right now. And the most that we're going to grow right now with our current production, our current US production is, to Canada and perhaps Mexico, but we're going to stay within the North American continent because if we don't, you have to, kind of utilize the shipping industry, ocean freight, in order to get your products places. And ocean freight is even shadier than even the shadiest company that you'd find in, overseas manufacturing.
Yes.
They use this frankenfuel stuff that is now being, globally investigated because they don't know what it's going to end up doing to, the air quality,
For the oceans and the
or the
marine life.
oceans. Exactly. They have, terrible human rights violations, and they fly their flags, under flags of convenience. So they pick a country that has the least amount of, the most favorable conditions for them as the freight company. And, you saw a lot of these stories that were kind of coming to light through, reporting either, things that you're finding online or through NPR about, um, these ship workers that are being exposed to COVID, that are not allowed to like dock and go home to see their families. Like there's terrible human rights violations in the
Well,
shipping industry.
and not to even mention the human trafficking and
Yes,
the drug
exactly.
smuggling and all of the other
Exactly.
stuff that happens. So, it's one thing when you're like, "Oh, well, I'm selling a sustainable product," but then I'm like,
Hmm.
"Yeah, but it was made in China and then it had to be shipped back over here." So,
Hmm.
did you really do something sustainable here?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I came from interior design, and I came from, like the built environment industry, architecture and design. And, one of the things that the environmental programs say is, you should be sourcing your product within 500 miles of where it's going to be used. Now, as a national brand, I can't do that. I can't like locate factories all over the country and, ship depending on where people live. But, just locating ourselves, locating our production on this continent is certainly better than producing it overseas and then, putting it on a boat and bringing it over here.
Absolutely. And, part of that conversation too becomes having quality products over
Hmm.
the quantity of products because, this whole fast furniture thing, when I was creating this studio 3 years ago, I was a one woman show. And so
Hmm.
I wanted to have furniture that had clean lines, but that
Mhm.
was something that I could move and change up my set, and I wouldn't need an extra set of hands.
Mhm.
And I bought several pieces of furniture that were extremely affordable, but then they get here and there's something wrong with
Yeah.
every piece of it. And there was one little shelf thing that I bought, and I had hired somebody from Lug, a handyman, to come over and put this stuff together for me. And he's like, "Ma'am, I don't think something's right." And I turn around, there were two legs to this little table that were one length, and the other two are another length. And he had gone ahead and put them on. And so he had a table that was like leaning like this. I'm going to post a picture of this in the show.
Please do.
I mean, it was so
Sounds
ridiculous.
ridiculous.
And
Yeah.
so then I reached back out and I'm like, hey, here's pictures. Can you send me the right legs? They never came. So I have a table that just like is sitting on the floor. I had to just take the legs off. It's a joke.
That's
Fast
bananas.
furniture is such a joke.
It's bananas, and there are certainly, companies that are, I mean, here, the ways in which you get prices down are either you buy it in massive, massive quantities and you make it all at once and you drive the labor costs down. You use cheaper materials and you build it so that it's only going to last for, a couple of years or a couple of like one move. You can't ever take it apart.
Yes.
You can't repair it. So using, just bad materials that can't be repaired or aren't going to last very long. And the third option is just you either, you don't pay people a livable wage. You're basically taking advantage of someone in the you have to take advantage of somebody in
Yes.
the
Somebody
process.
suffers. Somebody suffers.
Exactly. Somebody suffers. So, I didn't want to do that. We, our furniture is made to last lifetimes. It is made so that most of our pieces are solid wood. We do use some veneer product, but we're trying to like minimize it. Certainly we don't use it on the tops of surfaces that are being like our coffee tables. Our coffee tables are all solid wood on the top so that you don't have to worry about, nicking it and then you're down to like whatever, the plywood or some people make it out of MDF. The veneers that we do use, like on our side tables, we use thicker veneers so that if you do nick something, it's still like it's a thicker veneer. So if you do nick something, it can be repaired. So repairing is one thing. We tried to make our technology modular so that, who knows? I mean, it might be a neural link at some point that we're, like they're implanting our brains and, everybody's like, yeah, cool. And, making
Not
phone
this
calls,
girl.
just, I know, me neither, but like making calls, just thinking about it, like who knows what technology is going to look like, 50 years from now. And so, certainly you don't want to end up with a piece of furniture now that no longer works for the purpose that you bought it for. So, we thought about everything in terms of making it last forever, using quality materials, making sure that the factories that we're working with have a commitment to sustainability for the planet and a commitment to, financial sustainability of the workers who are making the products. So,
Yeah.
that costs more. And, there's a lot of people that are like, oh, you're making an elite product for, frankly, like white people who are taking over cannabis. But, what I keep trying to tell people is, I am 100% for everybody making a livable wage. And when we have more employees and when we do start to bring manufacturing into a facility of our own, which is in the works, is in the plan, the long-term growth plan. We'll make sure that everybody has is making money off of is building wealth off of this this job and this business too. I'm not one of those people that believes that just because I founded it, I get to have multiple homes and I get to basically hoard all the wealth in perpetuity.
Yeah.
It takes a village to build a business.
Absolutely. And while I'm growing my business, as I need help or somebody reaches out and says, "May I help you?"
Mm-hmm.
My first question is, what do you need to make financially to make this worth your while?
Yes.
First question, because before I even have the conversation, I need to know, can I satisfy this person and make
Mm-hmm.
them feel valued and them know that they can take care of themselves.
Yeah.
That's part of good leadership. And I think that's frankly how you figure out, what your corporate values are and where
Mhm.
you're going from there. Are you somebody that's playing the infinite game? Are you somebody who is thinking about, how am I leaving the planet?
Mhm.
How am I representing this culture? Am I protecting, the people that work for me? Or
Mhm.
am I playing that finite game of, I'm going to have, 25% more sales this quarter, and I'm
Mhm.
going to be the, number one US made furniture company in the world, like that, or in the country. So,
Yeah.
it's silly that we have to even have these kinds of conversations, but,
Mhm.
people grow up at different rates.
Yes.
So,
No, for sure. And
one, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I had to have this conversation multiple times when I was seeking investment in Forti Goods. I talked to hundreds of people, and I realized that investors are looking for, that hockey stick growth, and they want an exit. They want an exit within a couple of years, so they're playing the short game. They want you in and out. They want to make a boatload of money, and that's what they're interested in. And I was like, look, I'm hoping that we can build something that we can hold for a while. And, who knows, maybe it's not selling to somebody else who's going to absorb us. Maybe it's selling it to the employees at some point if we have to have an exit. But ultimately, I'm not looking to grow this business, in a quick way and then dump it. I'm trying to be the change that I think we need in capitalism and in fast furniture, just in business in general. And there's
Yeah.
a lot of people who are certainly more, have a much larger platform than I do, who are talking about, having this conversation now. So that's heartening. But to also hear, people like, oh, when I was talking to people like, oh, what are you, a socialist? It's like, well, I mean, I guess kind of in the basis, in the most basic, um, you know, in the most basic definition of it. But like, really, I just believe in care
Well,
for
why can't we just be conscious capitalists?
exactly. I love conscious capitalism. Like, I love that term because it doesn't make it seem like you're this person who's trying to take everything away from everybody and redistribute everything, which, although, in some instances, I do think that that is going to need to happen at some point. We won't get into that.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think that if we don't get to a point where more companies are taking this, conscious capitalistic, you know, uh,
Stance. Yeah.
yeah, stance on things, we're going to continue to have more haves, more have-nots. The planet's going to continue to be, treated like it's being treated now, and things are not going to get better.
Well, and I think it really just starts with having the conversation and giving people a little taste of it and making them curious. And for example, I grew up in Texas, and I moved off to Italy. Upon my return to Italy, I came out to the wine country of California, closest thing to Italy I could find here, and I was introduced to the maker movement.
Yes.
I didn't know what that was, but I needed a gig and they needed somebody to help produce an event. And so I got thrown into this world, and I'm like, yes, absolutely. It's about recycling. It's about
Mhm.
upcycling. It's about open sourcing.
Mhm.
It's about, finding new ways to use and do old things,
Mhm.
and just truly that quality over quantity, and
Yes.
keeping community and planet at the center of everything that you do. And that had never even been part of my conscious thought,
Mhm.
that this was such a thing. And so it completely changed how I move through the world, how I purchase things and or not really purchase things.
Mhm.
And so I just really think that if people see it and know it's an option, then they're more likely to choose it, because I do believe in the goodness of humans, and
Mhm.
that that we all want to support and be supported at the end of the day. It's just some shitty things happen to people that make them change the way they think and
Yeah.
they put first. And, so it's just like reintroducing people to the idea. I think that's a hopeful and optimistic way to get us going in the other direction.
Yeah, I would agree. And, I love that the maker movement is, that there are a lot more, small, even 1 or 2 person shops that are, creating things. But I would also say that just because somebody is a maker doesn't necessarily mean that they are, doing things in a sustainable way. I know a ton of people who are still, like a small 1 or 2 person shop that, they're still spraying heavy solvent finishes. They're, not necessarily looking for products that are, um, you know, sustainably harvested, or are, maybe not necessarily paying the, help that they have a
Certainly,
great
there's some of
wage.
those. Yeah, I mean,
For
that's
sure.
everywhere, and that's why we have to
Yes.
be conscious consumers and
Yes.
look under the hood of the company
Yes.
that we're looking to give our money to.
And that's the one thing that just because something is made overseas or just because something is made here doesn't necessarily equate like good versus bad. It really is something that you have to like, it's exhausting. I mean, you have to literally chase down if you're going to make a big purchase in something, if you're going to, or even a small purchase. Like I'm even, we're thinking about where, like there are certain things that we don't buy anymore because of, it comes in single use plastic packaging now. There's so much that goes into figuring out, just who you're buying from and what that money supports, and making good choices. And I
You know,
think that that's only going to continue.
yeah, and just a random example of that, after, I do this segment called the Sustainability Roll Up, and I had done a little deep dive on cotton and on fast
Hmm.
fashion. And I started thinking about the little cotton pads that I use on my face 3 times a day and throw in
Yes.
the trash. And so I went to a website and bought like a pack of 20 bamboo, like,
Yeah.
cotton pad
Yeah.
replacements and that I can just throw in the washing machine. And
Yep.
so, it's sometimes those tiniest of purchases that we just use and consume over and over and over again that
Hmm.
can make a really big difference in the long run.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. It is. It's all about making, it's kind of like the more the better you can be. And, I actually just did the same thing not too long ago, switching over to cloth, makeup removers and things like that. And, it's, things like making sure that your kid is using reusable containers in their lunch every day. And, I mean, it's a rabbit hole that you kind of go down, and there's a lot that you can green, that anybody can green in their own home.
Yeah.
um but it just starts with the desire to want to make better choices.
Yeah. So now let's switch gears a little bit because
Mhm.
you've been sort of a closet cannabis consumer for a majority of your life. You
Yes,
live in a prohibition
I
state
do.
and you own a company that is
Mhm.
considered an ancillary cannabis business. You
Yeah.
create furniture designed to keep people's stash safe.
Hmm.
Um, you don't touch the plant, but you have
No.
to talk about it all the time, and you have a little
Hmm.
6-year-old around. So tell me what
Yes.
that's like.
Well, she does not, obviously, for lots of reasons. She doesn't ever see me consume cannabis. One, because it's illegal here, and kids like to talk. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that she's not young enough to really understand the difference between smoking a cigarette and anything else. So, I want to, I guess, make good choices in front of her. So she doesn't ever really see me consume, although I do consume and play with her and hang out with her, and she's none the wiser. She just thinks that mom is, relaxed and fun mom, um, because running a business is hard and stressful.
Yes.
But there's there's not a lot that she doesn't actually see any of it. I mean, when we do photo shoots and things like that, like I have pieces that, are clean, and we use CBD here so that, we're not, we use CBD flower and CBD cartridges to, display and photograph all of our stuff so that we are not doing anything illegal, and our photographers and models don't have to worry about like anything illegal for them. So that's how we get around that. And my daughter has seen, there's a bong that someone sent us to photograph, with our products. And she was like, "Mommy, what's that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's a vase. It's just a glass." And she's like, "Well, what's this thing on the front?" And I was like, "That's where you pour the water in." And she was like, "Okay." She'll know at some point, but for now, it's like she doesn't really need to know. And
Are you
it is.
familiar with Session Goods?
Yes, that's actually the bong that.
Okay, I'm like, their stuff would match your stuff perfectly.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. No, that's actually the bong that I have. And so she sees that, and I'm like, "Yeah, it's a beautiful vase, and you pour the water in the hole, and that's how so you don't get it in up by the stems." And she's like, "All right, cool."
Yeah. So,
That's at
yeah.
some point she'll probably have some trust issues, but it's harmless enough for now.
Yeah. Well, and I do know that, growing up when we were part of that, Dare Kid group.
Yes.
And so, I have several friends who had, written letters and were taking them to school to give to their teacher to, like, narc on their parents because that's what they felt obligated to do after
Yeah.
hearing, McGruff the crime dog come
Yeah,
talk to us or
exactly.
whatever. And,
Exactly.
and now I'm like, just like you and I having a conversation the other day, and she'd gotten home and, we're talking and the word cannabis and different stuff is coming out,
Yeah.
of our mouths. And so when you think about just the parroting that young
Yes.
kids do about the things that they say at school,
Yes.
have you had any issues with that?
No, I haven't. And to be quite honest, her teacher, like I did a present. She's in kindergarten. I did a presentation to her kindergarten class about woodworking and how we take, like I sent in one of our cartridge blocks, and I was like, "Oh, this is a pencil." I sent in a cartridge block, and I sent in a pre-roll holder, and I was like, "These are pencil blocks." And I was like, "You can put crayons in here, and you can pull it out and draw on them." But I was explaining to them, like how you take raw materials, and then I sent them a video of the machine that cuts these out. And we went through like a whole thing, and the at the end of it, the teacher was like, "Oh, there's some of the other people in the class are saying that they're probably going to check out your website later and buy something." And I was like, "Great, like that's not what I'm doing this for." But so they're all like relatively cool about it. I mean, if she wanted to, she could probably call CPS on me.
That would be
But
insane, but yes.
it would be insane. I mean, there's my child is smart, clean, well taken care of, at school every day. There'd be no reason for her to do that, other than just to be, weird and
Yeah.
and spiteful. But yeah, I mean, they know kind of what I do. And it's funny because, I am in a prohibition state, but most of the people in our community know, a lot of our neighbors and people that my daughter goes to school with know what I do. And it's funny because people will now like confess to me their cannabis consumption, which I find funny. I'm like, I am not like a pot priestess or anything. Like you don't have to, you don't like, they're like, "Oh,
People need to feel that community.
Yes.
Like the people that are living in the closet, they're just
Yes.
dying to be able to
Yes.
talk to somebody. So,
Yeah.
you've cracked the door for that. So
Yes.
just take
Yeah.
it. Be that pot priestess.
Yeah. And, it's so funny because there is still really a stigma attached to parenting and, cannabis. You can do a Google search right now for, funny or like, alcohol juice boxes or like funny glassware or things that are like, because wine or because kids or, it's like, it's like almost like cool to use your children as a reason for your alcohol consumption. And, or certainly it's a marketing, something that people are, making products and marketing to.
Absolutely. I see that
And
shit all the time.
exactly. And it's like alcohol doesn't really give you any sort of health benefit. And in fact, in some situations, when you overconsume, it makes people very mean.
Yeah. Makes
Or
me a parent.
yeah, exactly. And so, it's so it's so strange to me that there's still such this like that like people really truly did like take the dare thing to heart and like still as adults believe it to this day. And that to me is like it's sad and it's
Well,
also
it's programming. It's the power of
yeah.
programming. I mean, when
Yeah.
you think about all of these like unconscious biases that you have, and
Mhm.
when you get still and you really start thinking about it, most of the time you can trace them back to being a child and something you
Mhm.
either, heard or got scolded by a parent or a grandparent, or the way that kids are programmed at school. I mean, you should make you nervous. Like, I
Yeah.
want to go to school and just like observe for like a month. What
Yeah.
in hell is happening here? And what are you teaching kids? And, that because that's such an important time of growth, and that,
Mhm.
connecting all of those dots. It's like, I don't want to leave that in the hands of someone blindly.
Sure. And to be honest, if I were living in California, Illinois, like even Michigan, like anywhere where there is legal cannabis, I would be having a much different conversation with my child um, than I can in a state with, laws against it.
Yeah,
So,
totally. Well, let's dive in a little bit. You did a little show and tell with part of your furniture.
yes,
But tell me what the benefits of the Forti Goods furniture is for pot consumers like me.
sure. So, one of the benefits is, you're just keeping everything contained in one. You now have one location for your cannabis. One of the things that I found was, there's a ton of different options for storage solutions. There's stash boxes, stash bags. Um, you know, those things are great if you're just going to be, storing your stuff that contains THC, little things into it. But when it comes to bongs, pipes, rigs, whatever you end up having, it's like you have to find a different place for that. So that's either like going up on a shelf or hidden in the basement or, like wherever it ends up being. And I wanted something where it's like, I just want to put everything together so that it's not like, oh, where's my lighter? Where's my this? Where's my that? Like I have it all together. It's all contained and it's locked so that I know that my child's not getting into it. And then two, I don't necessarily need my house smelling like it either. I don't necessarily want somebody coming into my home and being like, where's it at?
It's funny
Like
when my dad comes into my house, he all smells like your stuff in here.
your stuff. That's funny. So, we use carbon filters, replaceable carbon filters that, go inside of the drawer where you're keeping, the stinky stuff. And those can be changed out as needed. But essentially,
How often is that typically?
it depends. It depends on, like how much you're keeping in there, what type of product you're keeping in there.
So if
But
I have 14 different strains in there, but they're all in their own jars.
yeah,
You
so
know,
if you're in
like,
jars too, that's kind of cutting down as well. So, I would say you're probably looking anywhere from like 6 months to a year of, we ended up using we don't actually manufacture the filters ourselves, although they're made on the North American continent. We actually we did a huge search, R&D on carbon filters and what absorbs smell well. And we actually found a company that was doing it for the hunting market, for basically absorbing human smells off of clothes so that you can go out into the woods and find food. And we ended up making a bigger solution that would fit within our furniture. And they're manufacturing that for us, which is great. And so, we haven't really made it through like a full year yet, but in some of our tests where we have, smaller, or I should say, yeah, smaller stashes, we're at 6 months and you cannot smell anything at all
awesome.
from the jar. Now, like when you open something up and, you're going to smell a little bit in your house, but it's not like the act of storing all of it is really it's going to absorb a lot of that odor.
So if I have one of these, is it a little key that I use to get into it? Is it a touchpad
No,
with it? How does that work?
no, it's all on your phone. So we ended up building an app. So you can't actually see on our furniture. There is no like lock. You would not know that it locks at all, except if you try to open a drawer and it doesn't open. So um, it was really important for me, number one, to have furniture that was, beautiful enough that people would want it, even if it didn't have a locking capability. And then two, the locking feature ends up being kind of this cool bonus. So you cannot actually see, there's nothing on the outside that would tell you that it has a lock. On the back side of the furniture, there's a little grommet. We use a cell phone battery to recharge the circuit board, the brain of the furniture. We use something that's a rechargeable battery, like not unlike what's in your cell phone. And
How does that work?
how does it work?
The battery, like how do you?
So there's a grommet on the back.
happens,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's a grommet on the back. I should have there's a grommet on the back of the furniture or on the underside if it's a coffee table or a side table. But on our entertainers or bigger pieces, it's always on the back of the furniture. And then I don't have one sitting here right by me right now, but every piece of furniture comes with like a wall outlet that you plug into, and then a really long, like a 6.5 foot long cord. And so you basically just, plug it into the wall, plug it into the back of your furniture, and then you'll be able to see it charge up on your phone. There's like a battery level when you go into the app. And then, once it's fully charged, it depends on how many locks you have. It depends on how much you're going in and out of it. But we're anywhere between, a month to 2 months where you'd need to have, an additional charge. And we're looking at even increasing our battery size so that you can get to like, charging it maybe once a quarter or once or twice a year. So,
So you have the app. Say your husband has the app.
yes.
If he gets into the drawer, does an alert come on your app?
No, not yet. We're hoping that like as we get more like feedback from our customers about like what's working and what isn't, we're certainly going to make some additional changes and build out the app even further. So right now we're kind of like at a minimum, what I see as the minimum requirements in order for it to be useful to people and be a really great product. So right now, when you log into the app, you can put it on your Wi-Fi so that when you're not home, you can still see, you can unlock and lock. So kind of like if you have like a garage door opener that's on your Wi-Fi and, somebody shows up and wants to get into your house or even your front door, you can remotely unlock it from your phone anywhere.
In the maker world, we call that the Internet of Things.
Yes, the Internet of Things. So it is, it goes on your home Wi-Fi. It is, there is one person who is sort of like the account owner. And then from there, you can add additional users and you can give people, access indefinitely, or you can give people access for a limited amount of time. You can revoke access from people. Yeah. And then you have a history. So when your drawers were locked and unlocked, there are settings in there which allow you there's 3 different modes that we have, which is manual, which means you need to, manually lock it and manually unlock it every time you're using it. There's an automatic lock. So roughly about 15 seconds after you unlock it, the lock engages again. So you can you can go into it and get what you want out of it. But the next time you close the drawer, it's going to lock. And then there is a timed mode. So if you want to be able to get in and out of it for like, I think right now our timed mode is 15 minutes. So you have kind of 15 minutes, short session to kind of like get in and out of it. And then, you'll close your drawer, you walk away, and, in 15 minutes from when you opened it, it'll re-engage the lock again.
Kind of like our laptops. You walk away from it a few minutes.
Exactly, like that.
Yeah.
And then we also have fail safe and fail secure. So eventually the battery, there's a battery meter level on it. And when it gets to about 25%, it's a good idea to, plug it in and recharge it. But there are 2 different options. So a fail safe and fail secure. So if it fails secure, and that's what you've selected, when the battery runs out of, juice, the cabinet is locked until you plug it back in and it has enough charge to open it up again. So if you're living in a home with children, recommend that. If you don't live in a home with children, or you don't have as many concerns about it, you can fail safe, which is when the battery gets to a point where it can't fire the lock anymore. Just before that, it will unlock and it'll leave it unlocked until you charge it up again so that it can kind of do its thing again.
Right on. Very
Yeah.
cool, very smart furniture. If people wanted to check that out, it's
Yep.
fortigoods.com.
Yep. And it's Forti
Yep.
Goods. 40 with
And
an I.
yes, and you can check out, they're at Forti Goods on
Mhm.
all the social channels.
Yes.
Now, is there anything, Sharon, that I didn't ask you that's important you think to kind of round out the conversation?
Um, no, just other than, there's a lot of people who've been like, why do I need to like safely store it? I can keep it on a shoebox. I can keep it, on a shelf. I can hide it and do whatever. And it's like, yeah, you can. But like, I was just talking to somebody the other day and we were talking about how like when we were kids, every Christmas I'd be digging in the closet to try and like, you know, just unwrap a corner and see what I got. My parents caught me once and put an end to that. But kids are just really they pay attention to everything. I caught my own daughter, she had climbed up on the countertop, and that was actually the impetus for starting this company. She'd climbed up on a counter and helped herself to candy that my husband was hiding. So she knew where we were keeping the candy. And I was like, oh, thank God. Like if that had been anything that contained THC, or if it had been a medication, like, we would have had to we would have had to get medical attention. And,
Yeah, that
you
would
know,
have opened a whole can of worms.
not good for anybody. So, safely store your cannabis with the right that a lot of people in this country have to consume it legally comes a responsibility to store it safely. And what it looks like when your child is very young obviously is going to change throughout, as they age. You're probably going to have a different solution for a 6-year-old than you are a 16-year-old. But it's important to keep them safe.
Absolutely. And I think I would like to add on to that. My big takeaway is, we can't let the cannabis industry become like fast fashion, fast furniture. And so, it's important to support craft cannabis growers and these small businesses. And, don't let this industry get taken over by big ag, big pharma,
Hmm.
big alcohol, big pains in
Hmm.
the ass. Like,
Big
it's
tobacco.
yeah, it's our responsibility as consumers to, make sure that we're making responsible purchases that really honor the industry, honor the makers, and honor our community.
I agree. Well said.
Yes. Well, Sharon, thank you so much for your time. I love the furniture you're creating. It's so
Thank
beautiful.
you.
I'm relocating my studio soon, and I'm eyeballing a couple of pieces myself.
Let me know.
You got it. Well, guys, everybody, thank you for hanging out. And let's see, we don't have any questions from the viewers. So yeah, I think we're good to go. Sharon, thank you so much for
Wonderful.
your time.
Thank you.
I'll catch y'all next time on the podcast.